At this point, Facebook is the old school social network. Now, LiveJournal was the granddaddy. Plus, of course, MySpace gets the honorable mention. You had to pick your top friends and all that. But when we think of legacy social network at this point, we think of Facebook. It's where connections happen. Life is displayed there, ideas and articles, they're all shared. But there is another social network that isn't just old school. It's the original social network. The forest. Trees have a social network that is unparalleled, and it's just now being understood. An ecologist named Suzanne Simard, she showed all this at a TED Talk in 2016. It rocked my mind and the scientific world, and here's what she showed. It explains how little, tiny fungi connect trees, getting information and nutrients from one to another all underground. Here's how she proved it, because before this it was just a hunch. Photosynthesis requires carbon, so Simard put bags around adjacent trees, one next to the other. Inside one, she included a type of carbon that is needed for healthy growth. Inside the other one, she deprived it of that type of carbon. Then an hour later, she went back and did a test to see if the nearby tree, lacking the carbon, now had it. It could be detected with a special machine.
I went to my first bag with the birch. I pulled the bag off. I ran my Geiger counter over its leaves. Perfect. The birch had taken up the radioactive gas. Then the moment of truth. I went over to the fir tree. I pulled off its bag. I ran the Geiger counter up its needles, and I heard the most beautiful sound. It was the sound of birch talking to fir.
How'd the first tree know that the fir needed carbon? That's the question, right? To the little fungi underneath the ground. And this is just one of the hidden functions happening right beneath our feet and inside these social networkers. This book takes us inside that network. It's called The Hidden Life of Trees: What They Feel, How They Communicate, Discoveries from a Secret World. I wanted to go inside that world because in the book we see that trees are not only cooperators, they're social beings. They conspire and they commingle. The author, Peter Wohlleben, he has researched trees for decades and found a way to enter that world. I talked with him about trees mating, colluding, and surviving. Peter, you're the man who knows what's happening inside trees, their secret lives, their hidden lives. What are some of the biggest takeaways that maybe you were surprised about when you were writing this book?
For me, the biggest surprise was that trees support each other. And first I saw that on an old stump, which was after 400 or 500 years after the tree had been felled, was still alive without a green leaf. And yeah, that was really amazing because I learned that trees compete, that they struggle against each other for light and for water and for space, and it turns out that that isn't true.
That there is some strategy involved, even when they might do something like drop seeds or acorns, right?
Right. For example, they arrange for sex more than 1 year in advance because they want to bloom all together. And that means that they have seeds all together, and that they have a big amount of seeds, so that the wild boar, for example, can feed up all seeds. And the next year they won't bloom, so many of the wild boar will starve to hunger. And then after 3 or 5 years, they bloom all together once again.
Peter, when I think of evolution, I usually think of animals, learning how to keep the generations going, learning. They're smarter and they're more muscled, and they're going to perpetuate. Trees, I guess they've done something similar in a way, that they have evolved.
Yeah, really. And I think that's, in reality, a simple thing, that nature hasn't a special system for humans or for mammals or for animals in general, but for all living beings. So they try to become better, they try to learn. Trees, for example, are individually able to learn. And for example, when they suffer from a heavy drought, and they change their water management from the next spring on. So that means that they can learn, and that means that they must have a memory.
Are there just a whole array of cells working in concert, or is there something possibly directing all of these cells and mechanisms to go into action?
A tree is working as a whole organism and not just a single leaf or a single branch or a single root part. But for example, when there is a drought, and then first the leaves are recognizing the hot temperatures and the lack of water, and then the whole organism is shut down water consumption and is reacting like our body as a whole living being. So I think, yeah, there is something central, but I don't know where it is.
I asked Peter after writing this book, when he looks at a tree, what does he see? He doesn't see, an intelligent being, but he says it is so much more than he thought it was, that he almost hates writing books because they're made of paper, but that he says he's much more careful with anything that has to do with wood or paper. Let's go more in depth here. Trees, so much more complex than bark, wood, branches, leaves. They are planners. Experts say some are chatty. They share nutrients and information. Others, like the weeping willow, they are loners, usually found solitary. We wanted to get in the field and learn more about this hidden world, so we met up with Bill Shelton, a certified arborist. It was cool to see all the trees through his eyes. How does anyone become an arborist?
I was going to Old Dominion University. I was studying to be a political scientist, whatever that is. But I immediately fell in love with this job because there was a sense of adventure. Not so much man against nature, but man and nature. I'm a big believer that there is a genetic diversity as among trees as there is among people. Tall, squat, wide,
I've seen that referred to in some books and articles as a neurobiology, that they have their own, that while they may not be sentient as we think about it as humans, that in many ways they do think and plan for the future.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
How?
Well, I think, of a great example. There was a tree called the Y oak in Y, Maryland. And this tree was one of the largest oak trees on the eastern seaboard. And they kept this tree alive over and over and with cabling and bracing, but finally the tree was giving up its ghost, so to speak. And when doing that, it put out a bumper crop of acorns. Really? As a self-survival, a self-perpetuating mechanism to promote and to its own species and its own progeny, I guess.
So Bill, when we're standing out in a wide open space, it seems like there's some wide berth here, but then I have to imagine that between, let's say, these two trees, how close are they getting underground?
Oh, they're completely interconnected. There's millions of miles of microscopic root system they're completely intertwined. It is. There is a whole world going on underneath the ground.
In an urban area like here in DC and so many areas around the US, there's concern about shrinking green spaces. So there's a concerted effort, it seems, in many places to make sure the ones that we do have are healthy. So they rely on people like you.
Exactly. And then, of course, with cities like the DC, the District of Columbia, and to some degree Montgomery County, take it very seriously. You'll see a lot in an urban environment. This is called girdling root.
Oh, it's like a spider web.
If this tree could talk to you from the roots, it would be saying, "Help me, I'm strangling. This tree is literally strangling itself, because as it wraps around, it's girdling the central cambium of the tree, which is the lifeblood of the tree. For me, there's a bit of an immune process to this, because I have favorites. And I understand that some trees are, I believe, genetically weaker than others. I believe, for whatever reason, they just don't have the same strength in genetics as, say, oaks. Or say this beech tree over here. Trees become aware of what's going on around them, and I completely believe that. And while they may not have an exact nervous system, that corresponds to ours, I believe they're somewhat sentient.
After talking with Bill, after talking to Peter, social network just does not quite capture how interconnected, how sophisticated trees really are. We're not in the all-knowing avatar territory just yet, but they're awfully smart and they're very social. I think they're so cool.